program explores complex financial crimes and their global impact. The views expressed by guests do not necessarily reflect those of the producers and/or the host. From boardroom decisions to shadow banking, from Wall Street to the dark corners of the internet, this is From the Hill to the Trenches, the search for justice. I'm your host, Dorothy Hill. As a former Goldman Sachs associate who has worked in 5 countries, including Germany and Japan, trained in compliance by a former agent of the FBI, and advised both global banks and government agencies, I've witnessed how money moves through legitimate channels and shadowy networks. In this podcast, we investigate the world of financial crime, otherwise known as fin crime, compliance, and the pursuit of justice. We talk to the insiders, the regulators, investigators, compliance officers, and occasionally the reformed criminals who understand how financial systems can be exploited and protected. From money laundering to sanctions evasion, cryptocurrency schemes to corporate fraud, we follow the money trail and examine the human impact of financial crime. Whether you're a finance professional, work in compliance or technology, or simply care about transparency and justice, join us as we navigate the complex intersection of money, power, and accountability. This is From the Hill to the Trenches, the search for justice. So welcome, everyone. This is Dorothy Hill. I am the host of From the Hill to the Trenches, the search for justice. Today, for episode 2, we're taking a slightly different stance. So this is really less about justice and more about coffee, literally growing in the mountains and in various locations around the world. Tonight, New York time, we're taking you halfway across the globe to the Philippines. I'm joined by our very esteemed guest, Markus Ableitinger. He is based in the Philippines. And just a little background on Markus. He and I worked together years ago in Zug, Switzerland, for a company called Capital Dynamics. I was based in New York. He was based in Switzerland, and then spent, I believe, 10 years and 11 months running the Hong Kong office. And during my stint in Switzerland, I went through training. Markus was a very big part of that training. And I also had the privilege of going white river rafting with our colleagues from various countries around the globe. So that was a wonderful experience. And I thought it would be wonderful to bring Markus onto the show. He has an amazing background, very international, as a Swiss man, however, truly global in both his studies undergraduate in Switzerland, as well as having attained his MBA at Kellogg in the executive program. So I'll hand it over to Markus to give an introduction about his role in the Philippines and how did he get from Switzerland to Hong Kong to the Philippines. Go ahead, Markus.
Thank you. Good morning, good evening, Dorothy. Thanks for the intro. You said it pretty everything. Back in the days in Switzerland, we were together and I was there in the capacity of private equity investment manager at that time. At that time, when we first met, I was responsible for the European area. We had 2, which was the North American and the European side. And in 2000 and something around 2002 to 2003, management decided we should go out of our comfort zone and try to tap into the Asian Pacific market. This was pretty early for what we did, private equity, venture capital, and investing in private equity funds in particular. It was pretty early. And then it was a bit the question when we gonna do that, or how we gonna do this. So just following the time scale with 2002, 2003 was internally big discussion how we gonna approach Asia Pacific and so forth. And given that I had emerging market experience in Russia-Ukraine prior to joining the company for several years, plus that I was extremely interested in this new region, the CEO of the company let me do that. So he gave me basically a carte blanche and said, Markus, go there and do whatever you can to convince us that we should go to Asia Pacific. So that was the start of my journey. I then spent a lot of time with the region, gathered any information available at that time. In 2004, then after trips to the Asian Pacific area, plus a lot of research, presented our case, and or in the company, the board was online, was on it, and gave the green light. So in 2005, 2006, I started my expatriate life, which became then a local life to Hong Kong. Was a bit discussion at the beginning where we should go, Singapore or Hong Kong, but Hong Kong was a bit more the logical hub for us, more closer to China, and it more was going on. But yeah, so I moved in 2006. I moved finally to Hong Kong and started to build up the office there and the region. What's going on, and so I've really been into it. So was a big transition in a way, but it was very nice. It was very smooth. We were lucky at that time, I must say. We got a very big commitment from the American pension fund, one of the largest in the world. They entrusted us with the Asia Pacific portion in their portfolio. That gave us access from day zero to literally every private equity firm in the region, because yeah, sure, they wanted the money, and we had it, but of course we've been super careful in allocating it. But it boosted us a lot. Without it, it would have been more difficult, of course. But yeah, this was a great mandate we had, and we kept it for several years. So going forward, then over the years, we built out the team, we built out the portfolio. I been involved in pretty anything, fundraising, building portfolios, building funds together, fundraising in Europe. So I flew a lot to Europe and then also to the US to potential investors, presenting the Asian case, the Asian Pacific case. We had already commitments to show. So it was a very, very intensive, but super interesting period, because at that time, 2006, all the Americans and Europeans, the big names, just started to go there. So we've been really at the forefront, the beginning. It was cool. So we founded several private equity firms in the region, India, Korea, Japan, and of course, China, many of them with the hub in Hong Kong. Yeah, I can say it was a busy time. It was extraordinary. And then we started to institutionalize over the years, 2008, 9, 10. Started to become a more institutionalizing process. A lot of competitors came into the field as well. So there were a lot of, I would say, strategic things within the firm, how we position ourselves forward and so forth. So that led me to going to all the Asian Pacific areas. Anything you have on the map, I've been there, and Philippine was part of it. So in 2012, I think, in 2012, I met a personal encounter with second half at that time, and I started to become more interested in the Philippines. And I would say that was a personal interest for various reasons. Business-wise, we didn't really do anything in the Philippines. That was a bit, I could explain that, but it's not really subject to what we discuss now. But I went to the Philippines then more often and get acquainted with the country, English-speaking country, very easy to get around. People are very open, nice people, very similar to the Southern culture in Europe. So wasn't very hard to integrate here. Then in 2015, after so many years within the corporate world and having experienced a lot of interesting things, I decided after, I would say, 2-3 years of considerations already, maybe it's time to do something by yourself. I've been doing within the corporate side, I've done a lot of building up things. It was in 1996, I built an office for Clifford Chance Pinder in Moscow for origin taxation, international taxation within the law office. I built then the European part in private equity within our firm, which then sent me to Asia. Then I go to Asia and build up an office there and the business. So I was thinking, that's kind of something I like to do in a way, but I always did it for corporate, so why I'm not going to do it maybe by myself. So in 2015, comes the decision to split from the company and go my own direction, my own way. And it was just a question of what to do, exactly to do, and where to do it. So I took a little bit of time out. I was thinking about a couple of things, but one thing was sure, it should be related to private equity venture capital, what I've been doing before. And it should be something, well, I kind of really like as something like a hobby to professionalize it. And that's where coffee came up.
In that time, Markus, had you ever considered other industries? Obviously, you had the private equity and venture capital due diligence skills. You had dealt with so many different industries over the years. If you hadn't gone into the coffee sector or industry, what would you have done instead?
I think I would have stayed on a consulting capacity in what I actually get for a while and still do, but on a very limited basis, consulting private equity firms on the way how they present themselves to investors. That was something I've done a lot within our firm, where I had to present our case in front of investors, where I had so many cases where I've been traveling around and had face the tough questions of people who want to, you ask for money. At the same time, I've been on the other side investing into companies where I asked the questions and people who wanted our money. So I sat on the table on each side for a long time. And I thought the experience gathered through that, what kind of questions being asked, how you should present yourself, where people should sit, how many minutes should the CEO talk, how many time should you allocate to an associate if he's with you on the thing. Shall an associate come with you actually on a fundraising stage or any other person? Who should it be? How should they actually? What shall be presented in the case? So many hard facts and so many soft facts, which I down the road learned, experienced myself, mistakes made, and other great experience where you just found everything was rolling very well. All these experiences together, I thought I should use it. I should use that and get to other people, to those who are new in this business, and give them advice, because As you know very well, Dorothy, you have only one chance. This is the very first one. Then it's then it goes in two ways. Either you made a good impression or you made a bad impression. There's often nothing really in between. So if you're on the bad impression, I want to quote Einstein, Albert Einstein. I think he was saying, it's harder to crack a first impression than atoms. And I think that's very true. Once if you have achieved a good impression, this is really a big advantage. But once if you have messed it up, the meeting, for whatever reason, you're basically out. And making mistakes is fine, but there are some which you have to avoid, which you cannot do. Some of them are coming out of discussions within meetings you would have never expected it. So because the opposite pushed you to that, it sometimes push you to the limit, and that's another thing to learn, that you have to be pushed to the limit within meetings, things you do not expect. Because just think about all these private equity firms going on fundraisings or companies going on fundraisings. They do preparations for that. They do a lot of preparations for that. But often it's the unexpected which covers up everything. It's the body language. So that's also something interesting. I learned a lot about body language myself. And it's really, really interesting then when you have familiar cases. And again, on both sides, you judge the body language of the opposite. At the same time, when we are on fundraising, there are some people who judge your body language. It's just quite cool. But the point is, I wanted to use that knowledge I gathered over, what was it? Almost 20 years. And I thought this is helpful for people who are in this business. So I still do that, but to a very limited degree. I did it more in the first years after 2015. I did it more often, but I scaled it back because I wanted to focus on what I really do here now. So I would say I never left the area psychologically I've been in. I never left that. Even now within the business, I'm using it almost on a daily basis. And I think the coffee business then, which I've chosen, comes from my interest in it, my kind of a love to this business. Just remember, pretty every person on this globe says, let's go for coffee, right? Not let's go for tea. It is something mystic in this thing, but I wanted to have it in a professional manner. And I can talk a little bit more going forward in detail about this. That was the journey, but even now, as mentioned before, everything what I did these 20 years, I still use it almost on the daily basis.
That's wonderful. I remember working for Capital Dynamics, analyzing a fund for a potential investment by a public pension fund or an insurance company. And it's quite fascinating the level of detail that is involved, even looking at the various personalities of the fund managers and how they work together, how they have planned for their what they call their next generation and bringing up those junior partners, and how do they develop their pipeline of investments for their ultimate portfolio decisions. And then obviously all of the financials around the analysis that we as due diligence analysts and portfolio reporting professionals had to do. So on that note, when we talk about operations, equipment, can you tell our audience, those of you who are watching on YouTube, because some of you may be listening only, what is the machine behind you and how much is that on average to purchase? I'm just curious.
Okay. This in the background here is coffee roasting machines. So with this one, you remember if you go in a coffee shop and right next to the coffee machine. It's this kind of big machine. It's a reasonable big machine usually, which is a coffee grinder. And on the top, you see the coffee beans. You remember that? Or maybe not. I don't know.
Oh, of course.
Yeah,
Oh,
you
right.
do, right?
All the
Yes.
best coffee machines with the
You
beans
have
on
to have,
top. Yes.
you have to have that, right? So these brown beans are the result of coffee roasting. They are not brown in the field. They're not brown in the mountains. They are green in the mountains. It's like within the cherry, the coffee cherry is a green seed, uh, and that one needs to be managed in a certain way, and then it goes into the coffee roasting machine. Then through a certain process, it's get let's say baked, but we call it roasted. And the outcome is this brownish bean, which you can of course roast to certain degrees in certain flavors, and there's a lot behind that. But these are the one which do that. It's from all the processes you have in the coffee chain, from farming and then producing the green beans to coffee roasting. Then again, you need to work on it to make the cup of coffee. I would say coffee roasting is the biggest impact. If you roast not right, everything is you can throw it away. You get away when you. It's a very crucial part within the whole chain, and um, it is something I'm not exactly sure if you ever heard about third wave, where everything in coffee. Third wave developed a little bit out of the experience of Starbucks, and so created an environment of coffee is a bit like we are sitting in a dining room. We are almost like that. We are chatting together. We have a nice ambience. Coffee is more fun, and the quality already a little bit better than it was before. The third wave was then setting something on top of that, saying, no, there's some things in this process which are not yet perfect. We need to focus on more perfection of all the kind of steps within. And every individual step got classified and qualified. Look at it from a ISO perspective. Do you remember in Capital Dynamics when we had to, what was it before? I think it was the company before I worked for, it was RNF, a hedge fund, private equity hedge fund, where every process within the investment field got ISO certified. It was the first company in the world who has an ISO certification. That company then was sold to Man Group, which is the biggest at that time. I don't know now, but at that time was the biggest hedge fund in the world. Every process got individually classified, what it is, how to do it. A lot of things about each process. Exactly the same happens in the third wave movement, and so everything gets professionalized to a very high degree, and roasting was part of it. Is a big part of it. So these machines behind us, they are in the area of $1,800,000 US. The orange one is from Ohio in the US. It's called Dietrich. It's a German family who emigrated to the US and built that business there. Became a very, very big name in the coffee industry, in the roasting industry. And the other one, the black one, is Probat. Probat is the leading roasting company in the world. Every biggest roasteries in the world run this brand. It's also a German. German technology, German machinery. It's not coming from nowhere. In the meanwhile, of course, as you can imagine, there are lots of copycats all over the world. Most of them coming from Korea, Vietnam, Thailand, a lot, certainly from China. But these machines are still the Mercedes and the Bentley in the industry. It has a reason. You don't want to have this machine breaking down You don't want that because it's very hard to get then the technicians into, and it's a whole nightmare if you have those. At the same time, you can't roast. So what are you gonna do? Your clients are waiting, and etc. etc. So that is these kind of things on the background. So they are very instrumental to do what you do, and it creates the basis for, I would say, the basis for a successful coffee shop entrepreneur. Um, Many of them now, also caused by third wave, including us, we said we want to control this process ourselves. It's a process. If you do not do it by yourself, you don't exactly know if the product what you put in there or asked for or paid for is actually the one that comes out. Now we are a little bit in the area of your podcast themes, fraud, and all the kind of things. That's not the direct money fraud, but that's a fraud in terms of what you put in. If you put in millions from, let's say, Panama, one of the most expensive ones in the world, and you roast them, there will be pretty no one who can tell you if that's really the green bean from Panama, or if it's then you changed it with one from Kenya, or you changed it from the Philippines. Yeah, on the taste side, you can, to a large degree, come back to, oh, there's something wrong. You can say, well, that doesn't really taste like a Panama geisha. That tastes like, but it's very hard to get to the real reason why it's like that. So there's a lot of fraud happening. So you see the chamber here, this one. So this, if we do one roll, that makes approximately 600 cups of coffee for a coffee shop. So just one, I produce 600 cups of coffee for the coffee shop with this.
So that would get me through 1 year, almost 1 year, 2 cups a day.
Exactly.
Just joking.
Just one. So
yes,
and
600 cups.
Yeah.
600 cups. Wow. So how many customers would the size of the coffee shop where you're sitting now serve, like, per day on average, with, like, assuming that people order 1 cup of coffee while they're there?
That's a big question. And a very hard one to crack. In hindsight, it's easy to say, but if you have someone in front of you and they come, how many cups per day are we gonna make? That depends a lot on your shop, of course, on your expertise, on what's coming out. If you have customers who drink your coffee and run away, then, or if you have customers who love that stuff and will come back, this is extremely hard to focus. But a coffee shop, which now let's talk about the Philippines. Coffee shop who wants to succeed here and wants to build something by its own should have about 200 to 400 cups a day, which multiplied by, what is a cup of coffee in New York now, by the way?
Oh, goodness.
Just a latte or a cappuccino.
A basic Starbucks, which is on many corners, will run someone probably between $4 and $5, including tax, for a basic coffee. And a more sophisticated coffee, like a latte, which is also a larger size, could easily be, $7 or higher.
Okay. All right. So if I take the $4 as a benchmark, that will be translated into the Philippine currency, approximately 240 peso, which is interestingly not far away from, if you go to Manila, the capital, they charge the same price. It's actually quite amazing. While the costs, of course, are less than if I take New York as a super expensive city in general, right? So
yes. However, the coffee truck or cart on the corner, which is very typical in Manhattan, it used to be, when I worked in the city, $1 or $1.50 for a cup of coffee. It was decent.
Yeah.
So runs between the coffee shop, the coffee cart price, to a Dunkin' Donuts all the way up to your exclusive Starbucks or what we call Gregory's Coffee. Those are just two of the more expensive brands in Manhattan. I was just curious about the numbers, Markus, because what you're doing is really supporting the coffee shop owners as well as the people who work in the coffee shops, and then the coffee bean farmers in the Philippines who are looking for distribution and they want to be able to sell their highest quality coffee beans into an establishment like yours. Now, what percentage of the coffee that's grown in the Philippines stays there? And what percentage is exported? If you're not sure, I can look it up and share that with our listeners.
I know it exactly. That's an interesting scenery here in the Philippines. Philippines love coffee. They're coffee drinkers from in the morning till the morning, 24 hours. You know, there are a lot of call centers here, a lot of call center videos here everywhere, and they work 24 hours usually. So they love coffee. They drink coffee a lot. It's a coffee drinking culture from top down. So that is now translates into production of coffee insofar that there's a lot of production going on. There are lots of farms here. It's volcanic. It's perfect for coffee making. But current supply of local coffee does not exceed 20% of the demand of the population. They cannot produce more. So 80% of the demand of the population needs to come from somewhere else, which is usually now coming from Brazil and Vietnam. Those are the two main countries where we are sourcing from because of pricing, usually. Now, we are not for many weeks. So just to summarize that, if you want to become a coffee farmer, you should come here now. It is, that's a hard job, I can tell you. That's a brutal job. I've been so many times with coffee farmers. This is what, I must say, this is what puts you back to the humbleness. That's what puts you back to, my goodness, what kind of privileged life we lived or still live, in contrast to these people who, but it's a different world. It's very hard, I can tell that. However, from a business perspective, it's amazing because people run after you if you have coffee. So there is 80% discovered currently by outside coffee because it cannot be supplied by local farmers. So that's very good for farmers. It's not good for here. As a buyer of beans, if you're in a situation where there are lots of Filipinos are patriots, they want their own Philippine coffee. But you have to tell it's almost impossible to get it on a consistent basis. Plus, there are a couple of others. Let's get it like this. I don't want to go, hopefully, if you don't force me, I don't want to go too much into that, but there's still a lot of work to do for the farmers to get to the level of, let's say, average and good international farmers. I'm naming here Panama, Colombia, these two in particular. They have extraordinary good coffee farmers. They're so experienced, dedicated from generation to generation. If you take their coffee, which trades in the world at highest prices, their harvests, which usually take place around here in the Philippines from November to February, it's only 3-4 month harvest time. Their future harvests, 2026, 2027, is already sold. They haven't even produced it. It's already sold at the very, and it's because of the meticulous process they have in place and how they do it. Compare it absolutely one-to-one to private equity venture capital. These are companies who run on the highest efficiency, passive, always open-minded, always looking out for what's going on. That is just the pinnacle. If you compare then the farmers here to them, there is a long way to go. And we try to support, we try to help. I remember back in 2015 when starting this business here, it was a very bad coffee scene, and the coffee farmers were really, really bad. I can say that. Everyone knows that. And we go to coffee farmers. We picked some of them who we could communicate easily, because that's another thing. Communicating with farmers is a complete different thing. There's a different culture. There's a different mindset. You need to be very careful what you say, and how you say it, how you phrase it, how you deal with them. But we were fortunate having one a coffee farmer who been adopted by a Western European person in her early life. She was a child. She got adopted. The guy is from Belgium, and he supported her. She grew up with him, and she had a very good experience with him. So she's not afraid. Then they split later. He went back, and she lived in her own life. So when we come, she was absolutely happy to speak with me, because she had this very positive experience with foreigners. And therefore, she really listened very carefully. So we bring her YouTubes from the best farmers, how they do it. We bring her posters of big, of things in the process which she should take care of. We put this in the farmhouse, we sleep there, and etc. We made a hell of an effort to show her. The name is Maridik. Maridik, look, if you complain about what's happening now, it's only because the quality is not good, because of this and this and this. If you change those things, some of them don't take any money. It's just a different way how to do it. You will go there. You will be on that level. Look at this. And you show her things like that. So you go really easy, but with dedication to tell her, if you change the quality, you will see. Because that's the problem in many emerging markets here. It's usually quantity, price, but not quality. And that mindset has a deep foundation, and especially with farming, just make it cheap and do as much as we can. But it's not sustainable. And I can tell pretty sure, because of her positive experience with foreigners, she really, really listened to that, and she applied it. And then there were the Americans with the aid program in agriculture who added money to further education of the farmers at the same time. So that particular person now, many years forward, is the number one coffee farmer in the Philippines. She goes in an educational capacity representing the Philippines in Seattle. She worked several times in Seattle. She worked in many other countries, in Japan, in Korea, many other, where she lectures now her experience, and etc., etc. So this was a tremendous story, and is still a very, almost an emotional story to us, because it was this fantastic example of, if you mentor someone, show him what's going on, visualize him, what may happen to you if you do that. And it really worked out like that. So just to finalize this thing, in 2015, it was almost impossible to go to her place. It was high in the mountain, 1,400 meters above sea level, in the middle of Mount Apo, which is a volcanic mountain here. It's the highest mountain in the Philippines. 200-300 farmers in this region, and she's one of them. It was almost impossible to go to her. The street was so bad because of her achievements within the community, but also Philippine-wise. They built her a cemented road now to her house. So it's these kind of things. This reminds me back to Ukraine and Russia, where we gave the company owner of a big beer factory, which we bought and then had to redo. We gave him a white Mercedes for a bonus. He got the white Mercedes in Nikolaev, unfortunately a bombed area now, in Nikolaev, where he became a mayor. And we gave him, as a bonus, a Mercedes. I still remember the giving over, etc. And this guy was so happy. He was so happy. He was so proud. And he got the right direction with this. Not we had another one who got the wrong direction, but he got the right direction. Those are these things, sometimes these small things which we forget, which drive people. That was a very good example.
Absolutely. And it doesn't matter if you're associate at an investment bank in Manhattan or your example of a coffee farmer among 200 others on roads that are very difficult to navigate. Making those infrastructure changes in the roads or giving someone a vehicle that definitely is a status symbol, no doubt, and also benefits their family. And then by creating that value in that generation, that can then be compounded and grown, pass on the talent and skills and assets to the next generation, which is my question, Markus, on many of these coffee farmers, given that amazingly there is so much demand for coffee within the Philippines and yet a shortfall of producers. Are there programs of the Philippines government or Pan-Asian that are supporting investment capital to create more coffee farms? How does that work?
That's a really spot on question. The short answer is there are programs increasingly, not only coffee, but also cacao. This is also something very, very popular and famous here. It's also cacao region here. There are programs. However, I would say government programs having the issue of, yes, I give you something. Maybe you get a new facility, a pulping machine or something, or a huller or something. I give it to you. And they give it to them, but then they go away and don't come back. Remember back within the private equity, the operation, why they started in the 2000s, a little bit later than the operational partner system, operating partners in the company, because they needed people there. So the big guys with the expensive shoes comes first. They set out the strategy, and then comes the food truck guy who has to guarantee that these are implemented, not forgotten.
Yes. Right. Make sure it's done properly, institute the controls, and then measure the efficiencies.
Right. Because the guy with the big expensive shoes just comes every half a year, and that's not sufficient. So the same here. Governments come in, they give, but they go back and unfortunately don't follow up. They don't do the most two important things. Control and follow up. Control, follow up. Control, follow up. So it's not that effective. It's helping, but it's not that effective. And it depends on the intellect, on the open-mindedness of the individual then. So many farmers, unfortunately, they take it, they're very happy, but after 2 months, this thing doesn't work anymore because no one takes care of it. And the government is gone also. So you need to, if you take a small family of farmers, which we did under your hands, you need to make that control and follow-up process imminent, always. And it works at some point, but at the beginning you have to be that. Otherwise, it's not working. The number two, what you said, succession, all this kind of thing. The kids, in particular, Maribik, she has kids. The kids usually here in the Philippines have a hell of a respect to parents. They still what the parents say is work. It's not so much in the Western culture anymore. In our countries, in my country, if the mother says something, well, right? It's difficult. Plus social media. They are distracting the young people a lot. Now, it is hard work to be a farmer. And these young people, when they come down into the city, they see all these kind of lifestyle things here around, mobile phones and hanging around and doing basically nothing than just it's very destructive to succession, because a child says, well, why should I do this hard work? Why should I go into the field? Why should I do this in the heat? While at the same time, maybe I can work in a call center. Maybe at the same time, I can work here or that. And I don't mean, it's very, very hard. And we can see that there's a very little succession to these coffee farms. Only the good ones now, those who really went into this kind of situation where they stack up in quality, the kids see that. The kids can see that, oh, wow, yeah, if we do right, we can actually earn money. But it's not everyone can see that. There is still a lot of very stubborn people, very stubborn farmers, and that's in general, who do not let go from the past or are not that open-minded. Hey, you can tell them, hey, you have the golden time here if you just do right. But it's not resonating with many of them. So it's a combination of intellect. It's a combination of what your parents go through. It's a combination of what goes on in the city. I'll give you a nice example, maybe not exactly in this direction, but the mindset. When in 2015 we go there, we then stay there overnight, and Marivik serves us a coffee. Then he serves us a coffee from Nespresso. I don't know if you know that still. This is a sachet with coffee in there. It costs about 10 peso, which is 15 cents, something like this. Super cheap. You pour it in and it dissolves, right? And then you drink it. Kind of a bit of a horrible drink. So she serves us that and said, Mark, and I get this on the table. I said, what the heck are you doing? You are a coffee farmer and you're serving me Nespresso coffee. How is it? So, and besides, it's crazy. It tastes also pretty not good. Let's put it like that, to be diplomatic. And she says she was surprised by that. She really thought she gives us some. She thought completely the opposite, without intention, just like that. Then we discussed about it, and then I told her, Marie, and down the road, she started to make her own coffee much better. And within the next trips, I come always back to that. Why did you do that? And she says, Markus, I was thinking about that. I was thinking about that, but it's like this, Markus. Every time when we go down to the town, which is maybe every 2-3 months, we see right at the beginning of the town these big billboards, big, super huge billboards, like in the US next to the highway, with a marketing slogan like Nespresso, the big thing, and then a Western family, happy smile, and all these kind of things. Just smiling this coffee in your face. And she thought this is just a superior coffee because of all this, what she sees here. And now she has to laugh so much about it when she thinks about this, because it opened her eyes. It's all camouflage. It's all, marketing, advertising, but the reality is different. And now she opened her own small little coffee shop. Plus, you imagine, actually it's good that I remember this one. Now, within already 2 years now, she puts through in her community of 300 farms in Mount Apo. They do not sell this coffee anymore. They do not sell this sachet from Nestle anymore. They don't.
Amazing.
Yeah, I forgot to say that, because that was, they all, she was the driver for that, said, well, we are producing coffee. We are coffee, we produce good coffee if we can. Why should we? The sachets, just for information, it includes the cheapest coffee possible, which is also from the variety, the cheapest they use, which is Robusta coffee, which is the Arabica is the other part, which most coffee shops in New York, I think, if not all, they will serve Arabica, which is superior quality to Robusta. Here it still has a tradition, especially because of that, because all the provinces drink this coffee. They still have this taste in their mouth. So it's hard to change for them, but it's not a superior coffee. It's a very cheap coffee. So that's a tremendous story, which it's all what I encompass here. It all has some kind of connection to building what private equity does, what venture capital does. It's just high tech is completely something different than coffee, but the essentials are the same. That's like when I still remember very well my first, in a bit of an inexperienced way, European private equity when I go to CVC. CVC at that time, maybe you remember, was the largest, next to Cinven, the largest buyout company in Europe. At that time, they did 1 billion plus transaction, which was just unheard. Now 1
Yes,
billion
I remember.
transactions are nothing anymore. But at that time, it was unheard. It was the buyout firm. And I remember when I go there first time and had, we wanted to invest due diligence, said, well, you are so little people here in this company. You are just 10, 15, and you are buying the biggest companies left and right. How do you do that? They said, Markus, in a simplified way, the problems in companies, 80% are all the same. Doesn't matter if you have a small one, if you have a big one, they're all the same issues. There's only 20% which are very company specific, but all the others are the same. Same here. You need to convince someone about farming. You need to convince him. If you change your mindset, you will have it better. But you need to support that. You need to show it to him in a very simplified way. Now, Cinven probably doesn't have to show it in such a simplified way, but they do have to show them also, you see, we have a portfolio company, they do similar, they do this and that, why are you trying, etc., etc. So in general, what Cinven does is not very different to other, but that is really what I encounter pretty every day. The basic problems are always the same. And they are always related to the person, to the people itself. It's not a secret from all these 20 years when private equity firms, venture capital firms, startup companies didn't work out. They were not successful. In 99.9% of the cases, it was always the people behind it. It's true.
Right, absolutely. And I remember as you're talking that, like I mentioned before, you know, the investment process, the financial analysis, the rigor of the controls framework for that company obviously are so essential. And often there would be an investment decision that would come down to the quality of the investment team, the strength of leadership. And then when I think about having worked at Deutsche Bank, when I was hired by Tim Myopoulos, who later ran Fannie Mae, he had said to me during the interview, "I'm going to ask you a question, Dorothy. You're an MBA. We're hiring you in the legal department of Deutsche Bank. Which is the most difficult component to manage? People, processes, or technology?" And I said, people. Managing the people, affecting behavioral changes that would align to many of the corporate and strategic goals that we had set for the company, which at that time was to undergo a massive, modernization of all the derivatives documentation. So I absolutely agree with you that regardless of the industry, it comes down to a framework and also the tone from the top. So what I wanted to ask you as we near the end of the recording is, you talked about many young people in the Philippines and all the modern, quote unquote, distractions. Is there innovation and are there new technologies that are coming out of the Philippines higher education system, like apps and tracking technology that are being introduced to the coffee farmers? And if so, could you give us one example?
Not to the coffee farms yet. No, that would be it's within coffee shops. They use already. You would probably not see big differences between the Western world and here. That's good. That's fine. Digital ordering and everything. And that's here. On the coffee farming side, it's not. And I cannot imagine it for a couple of years yet because the gap is so big yet. I don't want to say it's illiteracy, but it's still, the coffee farmers are still within their 40s, 50s.
Yes.
And most of them haven't really gone through any education at all. So technology is away from them. There are maybe 2 or 3 who go in this direction and already have a name here. But given that not only Mount Up, but all over the Philippines, there are thousands of coffee farmers. That's just a 0 point something percentage.
Right.
No.
And it makes sense because I think about dairy farmers in the United States. My step grandfather was a dairy farmer, had massive dairy farm in Ohio, and he learned from his father and multi-generational knowledge that was passed along. And of course, I always enjoyed watching when the U.S. Department of Agriculture would come in and test his equipment, and everything had to be very clean, where the milk was stored. And I was always very fascinated by watching all the compliance checklists. Maybe that's why I eventually went into compliance. But that being said, it's really the mega industrial farms that then brought in that level of technology investment that's basically more difficult or challenging for a smaller farmer, whether it's a coffee farmer or a dairy farmer. So size matters. However, it also shows us in the Philippines, there's a lot of opportunity for people who want to go into that industry, have access to capital, and are willing, like you said, to learn and be open to becoming a better farmer and learning how to manage their capital and the people who work for them, right? So they can be one of the select farmers to sell their beans when that time comes. I'm fascinated by the fact there are only 3 months. So that's your summer, that's our winter here in the Northern Hemisphere, obviously, but 3 crucial months of production. Is that right?
That's correct. And that's where they have to make the money from.
So what do they do the other 9 months of the year? Just preparation and planning?
Many of them do cross planting. They have other things. They do, they plant other vegetables and sell vegetables, carrots, salads, anything like that. So they try to substitute that with, some of them have coconut fields, which they then, not on that high elevation, of course, but banana as well. So they do other things at the same time. So it's not that they have nothing, but the main is coffee. And what you mentioned before, just to add on to that, money is not really the issue in general. There are people who support here or would support. It's more that before you give out the money, the problem is here that most of the time you can't see that this money is being wisely invested. So you're back off. Or you do it like 2 very prominent cases over the last 2 years. Both of them try to deal with us here, but all immense money on the side. Their attitude towards the farmer was very, almost a little bit bullying. Here you have money. Here we have this. You have to, a little bit like when someone goes into a company which already experienced 3 buyouts. They know what the questions will be, and they will work it off. Bum, 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 bum. Everything like that. And they try to do the same approach with farmers. So, okay, within the first half year, you have to do this and this. Then we will control that. Then the next is this. We follow up, and the money comes then. That's too much for them. You cannot do this with a farmer. They tried to do it, and both of them ended up in the courts. And both of them, from a beginning euphoria of like, this Las Vegas marriage where you're super happy the first night, and the next day you wake up and say, what the heck did I do? It's exactly like that. And the farmer will always win. In short, if they would probably do good if they follow, but it's too much. So they end up in court because the farmer says, what the heck? And the other, there's such a misalignment. And that's why it's so difficult to work with them, or not only with them. It goes on both sides. It's a difficult field. That's why technology, all the modern things in strategy and marketing we know or we learn or we apply, it's very hard to do it with farmers. Very hard.
Yes.
And it's not something that changes overnight. That's for sure. So that is still a big field to work. But it needs really patience and a very delicate approach to do that. Yeah.
Well, thank you. So you've definitely given me a new spin of from the hill to the trenches, because our listeners will really think as they start their day about the coffee beans that grow in the Philippines and how they make their way into your great roasting machines and eventually ground into a wonderful cup of coffee. So we thank you so much for being one of our first, podcast hosts, Markus. We always wanted to stay international, since I worked in 5 countries around the globe, and you yourself are also very international in both your education and professional background. I wish you continued success in all of your endeavors, and I welcome any of our listeners today. If you have any follow-up questions for Markus, please reach out to me. I will field the questions to him. And we thank you again for all of your time and wonderful insights.
Thank you, Dorothy. I wish you all the success as well. Thank you for that. It's really, really nice to talk with you.
Of course. Thank you.
You've been listening to From the Hill to the Trenches, The Search for Justice. I'm Dorothy Hill. Financial crime, or fin crime, may seem distant and abstract, but its effects touch all of us through market instability, compromised institutions, and eroded trust in our financial systems. If today's discussion has sparked your interest, there are ways to stay engaged. Visit our website, www.hill2trenches.com. That's number 2, hill2trenches.com, where you will find resources, extended interviews, and case studies mentioned in this episode. Follow us on social media at Hill Trenches, that's trenches plural, at Hill Trenches, for daily insights and breaking news in the world of financial integrity. Most importantly, share what you've learned. Greater awareness is the first step toward a more transparent financial system that works for everyone, not just for those who know how to exploit it. Until next time, remember, following the money reveals the truth, and truth is the foundation of justice. Join us again next week as we continue our search for justice in the complex world of global finance.